Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
Nope. But we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abby.
That's me.
That's you.
And you.
Hey, everyone, and welcome to The Connected Life. We have our special guest here again.
It's her birthday.
It's my birthday.
Pietze Duffield's birthday.
Yes.
So some of you may know Pietze from former episodes.
Yes.
She's my bestest friend in the whole world, and our birthdays are 5 days apart.
Bestie for the restie.
Bestie forever. And
Wow.
For his birthday.
Justin
What did I
has
just
to put
get
up with
into?
us. Literally, this poor man. I always feel bad.
No,
every
literally, you're leaving tomorrow. So
I am. Are you feeling good about it?
Today, you know, your birthday is worth celebrating, and the fact that you're leaving is too.
That's hysterical.
Oh my god.
Okay, me and Pietze have like this almost, it's not a narcissistic relationship because it's actually very giving, but
Yeah.
we have this relationship. We just had a friend over, Ruth, who was like, I've never been around two people who affirm each other more than you guys do.
Yeah, it's a bit ridiculous.
We watched the movie The Spy Who Dumped Me, and I was like, oh my gosh, that is me and Pietze 100%. Mila Kunis and Kate McMinnon.
Yeah, I'm the funny one.
I'm the hot one? No, I'm just kidding. They're both hot.
Oh.
Oh, that's fine. You can be that one. I
No,
just want to
we're-
be the funny one.
No, you're the hot one.
No, you're the hot one.
That's really
No,
how
you're
it
the hot
is.
You're
and
the
funny
best.
one. Oh my
This
gosh.
disgusts me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Justin, literally. I'm sorry, but
In the movie though,
Sorry,
they're like
everyone.
being chased and like they're about to get murdered by all these people, and they like stop in the bathrooms to like affirm each other, and they're like, oh my gosh, you're doing so good at running from them, you did such a good
oh
job
my
at
gosh,
kicking that
I just want to
person."
say that is a really difficult situation that we are just in, and you handled it like a boss.
This is
You
what my
are a
entire week
boss.
was like.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
all of you guys who are still with us, the men,
They've
well,
like tuned out already. They're like,
Yeah.
I'm out.
well, I had to deal with it for a week. So,
Today,
anyways,
today, let me say one more fun thing we did for our
yeah,
birthdays today.
yeah.
For
Yeah.
our birthday, I mean, it was technically your birthday, but it's like an R thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's an R thing.
We watched Sister Act 2 today.
Yes, we did, which is like one of our all-time favorite movies.
Here's the beauty of that film and today is that I didn't have to be there and watch it.
No,
No,
this is
you-
so true.
I was
I
at
always
work.
tell him I want to watch it, and he's like, "Oh gosh, that's the worst. No way."
Oh my gosh. No, it's the best.
I know.
We might have had a slight argument over who got to sing Lauryn Hill's part.
We lip synced.
Who's Lauryn Hill?
Oh my.
No,
Just get out of the
No.
room right now. Please
Just-
leave.
What's a Lauryn Hill?
you deserve
Oh,
to not be
no.
alive. For
I
that.
just can't. I'm moving on
I
because
once
I
sledded
can't.
down a Lauryn Hill.
Oh. Actually, you don't want to say that.
No, you don't want to say.
You
that.
don't want to say that.
But so
I like Lauryn Hill. She's
Yeah,
great.
she's awesome.
we did get in a fight over who could lip sync her part.
Yeah.
So for Pietze's Instagram, she got to lip sync her part, and for my Instagram, I got.
That
to
was the
lip sync.
compromise.
That was the
So the
compromise.
reason that we're bringing Pietze on today, do you see what I did there? Because I've been wrangling them all
You're
week.
like,
I'm
I'm
so
done.
done.
Yeah.
I'm
Normally
done.
you like the banter in the beginning of the podcast.
Yeah.
But this
when
type of
me and
banter,
Pietze
he's
do it,
over
you're like,
it.
Oh, I like it when it's funny and it's enjoyable. Pietze almost spit water everywhere. That's
I
funny.
did, I'm sorry.
That's amazing.
If I break the mic, I'll buy you a new one.
Yeah. So, but we brought Pietze on
funny.
here because
I
she had,
like it if it's funny.
I like it if it's funny. That's what he said when we said it. Oh, we're going to watch Sister Act. He's like, oh, great. That sounds like a torture movie. It's going to be Saw 8, Abby and Pietze. Yeah, you know.
That's exactly. We're like, I can't wait to watch it. We'll sing, maybe dance. He's like, kill me now. That's the worst.
yeah, I had good delivery on it. Way better delivery than you just had.
No, we did just
we
fail.
just kind of
You
botched
did butcher
it.
it.
You'd
Butcher
have
it.
to-
Do you want to say how
Anyways.
you said it?
No, I don't even remember.
He doesn't care.
I was
He
just
wants
busy
to
with
move on.
He
life.
wants to move on.
And
Go
my
ahead.
ears were being tortured. But here's the deal. I love you both. As you
We
can
love
all
you
tell,
too.
those who have tuned in for the very first time, I'm not actually that horrible of a human being.
No,
This is our
he's
banter.
the best.
And I
He's
love
had to
them
put up
both
with us all
dearly.
week.
But we brought Pietze on because she has we want to talk about parenting
Yeah.
today.
Mm-hmm.
And parenting, for those of you who don't know, we don't have a child.
Well, I have a child.
I am not
I
a child.
have a child.
I am not a
Yes,
child.
you
Take
are
it back.
the
Take it back. Take it
No,
back.
all
Take it
the
back.
time.
Yes. Yes.
I literally have to discipline you. I have to put you in bed in time.
Okay.
I have to. When
Collectively,
we're in public,
you and I do
you
not have a child. Although we've seen some cute children that we wanted to abduct, but that's
Oh,
illegal
1,000%.
in all 50 states.
I'm
Yeah,
glad
we
you haven't
checked into
subscribed
it.
to
And
that.
more- morally
we checked
corrupt.
into every state.
Yeah. So we don't have children, but we do actually talk to a lot of people who are parents, and we help them on the journey with dealing with their children oftentimes.
We often also talk to a lot of people who used to be children
Yeah.
and how their parents screwed them up.
And so there are levels and places where we understand a level of parenting because we understand the dynamics of what it
human
was
dynamics.
to human dynamics.
Right.
But we value the idea of bringing other people in who have been on their own
Who
journey.
actually know what they're doing.
Yeah, because
well, that's TBD.
yeah.
We'll
Yeah.
see when my kids get older how messed up they are. And then
Yeah.
I'll decide
When they're back in
if
our
it was
offices,
good.
we'll see if it works.
Yeah.
Yes.
The grandiose experiment.
Exactly.
But I think that, like, for me, when I see parents come in and share their heart stories, I have so much compassion on them because, like, literally, I don't have children. I don't have to be in their shoes. I can have deep levels of compassion and empathy, but I'm not actually in their shoes. And I like the idea that we can bring someone in here that is in your shoes.
Yeah.
So those of you
Yeah.
who are parents, like, you can go, oh, I have someone else that actually has been there. And Pietze has a unique circumstance herself, which I think, like, gives her a bit of a medal,
yes.
a badge of honor
She
that
has
she
like
gets to
5
wear
medals.
because of the
A
unique
trophy,
parenting suit. Yeah,
a deer rack. She gets all.
doesn't even make
Don't
sense.
make out your deer rack. I'm thinking about things you hang on the.
Things you
couple of
hang on the
Emmys,
wall.
some Grammys.
Oh.
I'll take those ones. Maybe not the
Oscars.
deer rack, but I'll go with the Emmys and Grammys.
But in all
Pietze
seriousness,
has a deer rack.
Oh my gosh.
yeah.
Okay, we're
Sorry.
moving on.
Abby grabbed her chest. It was a sexual innuendo about the body.
Sure was.
So, but in seriousness here, you actually have, like, I think that you're an amazing mother. And we're going to get
thanks,
into
Justin.
reasons why I think you're an amazing mother. And yeah, sure, it is TBD, to be determined how you do parent, what that'll look like long term. But you're up against odds that most parents aren't up against. And
You've done like trial through fire parenting.
yeah. So Pietze has a special needs child as well as a neurotypical child. And so we're going to get into what that looks like for her. But she got thrown into the deep end of the pool with her daughter, Yana, who happens to be autistic.
Yeah.
And there's been a journey of having to navigate that as a mother, not
As
only
a wife.
as a wife. What does it look like to navigate that? And then also another child comes in the picture and take care of that other child who doesn't have that same condition.
Yeah.
And what does it look like to love them both and discipline? And there's a million things that are in that process. And I know that there's only a couple key things that I know that the two of you wanted to talk about in your journey of parenting.
Yeah, we're going to talk about 6 things that Pietze has learned
Yeah.
through parenting. And I think she has a perspective. I work with so many parents, and Pietze has such a great perspective. And she's a life consultant. So there's just so much emotional intelligence in how she does this. And it's not about being perfect, which is why we have her on the show. It's not about being perfect.
Yep.
It's about, like, what can you understand and what can you do? So,
Yep.
Pietze, why don't you share a little bit about your family, and then
Yep.
we'll start on the 6 things you've learned.
Yeah, totally. So, yeah, just like Justin was saying, my husband and I have been married for almost 12 years now, which is crazy. And we had our daughter, I think, 7 years into marriage, and she's 5 now, almost 6. And then and she's autistic. And then we have a 2-year-old son. And our daughter is she's very autistic, in a lot of the typical ways, but just an absolute sweetheart.
Oh.
Like, just so
Super
precious,
precious,
so
Her
full of
joy
love.
lights up the room.
Yep.
There's like something about her, like sparkle, her song,
Yep.
her enjoyment of life that just pulls you in.
Yep, totally. And then our son is, well, if you could use one word to describe Moses, most people would say crazy.
Crazy.
Yeah, crazy is what comes to mind. He's just a level 10 personality. So
Yes.
if he's feeling anger, he's feeling at level 10. If he's feeling joy, he's feeling at level
And he
10.
pretty much shrieks on both sides.
Yeah.
Like
Yep.
screaming at the top of his lung for anger, screaming at the top of his lungs for joy.
He just kind of flails around, but he literally, both my kids, honestly, in so many forms, they just make me smile on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Like the amount of joy that these kids bring to our lives, like, is just pretty amazing. But
one of
go
the
ahead.
things I love about watching you as a parent, and I think this is very rare, is that you actually love parenting. And
Yeah.
your parenting it's been hard.
Yeah.
You've had huge learning curves, but you actually love it in all of the things. I'd actually love you to I've watched you and I'm so moved because you and Johnny you love both of your children incredibly.
Yeah.
But you love Yana in a way that is so pure and incredible and beautiful. There's you love her so perfectly. Like there's not an ounce of you that feels disappointed or frustrated or angry at her. It's just such a beautiful heart posture. And even in the hard days, parenting is one of your biggest joys.
Yeah.
Well, let's. I think that I don't know if we could talk about a couple of the hard days or if we plan on having that conversation.
Yeah, definitely.
But I would like to hear a hard day. Like I think that there are probably hard days that happen that would make parents probably stuff that you walk through where other parents would want to drive their car off the road.
Yeah.
And end it all because it feels like too much. And based on how they approach life and their perspective of what they think they need to be as a kid. And there's just a lot of struggles that take place. And as a side note, the way you approach it doesn't feel like they're struggles.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
Horrible job of doing it, but yes.
Because your heart, you go, you almost, the way that you approach it. And again, that's why I want to hear some of the struggles because it could feel like it's so easy when you talk about things because you're like, oh, that must not be all that hard.
Right.
Because her reactions and responses are so.
Yeah, she's a freaking boss. She loves so well.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll just say, first of all, like when you're parenting an autistic child or any child with special needs, one thing that you learn that's trial by fire is you don't get the same gratification that normal parents do. So for instance, our daughter for a long time didn't respond to physical touch. Like she wasn't endeared to us. She didn't say mama until she was 3. So I went 3 years of being a parent without ever hearing somebody say my name.
Right.
Which those
Most
are normal
kids.
Yeah. So there's actually an oxytocin response when your kids, say enduring things or do things to endear to you, it actually creates that bond of oxytocin. So it's one of the things that's really been a gift in it is that I've actually had to learn how to connect and without her ever being able to give back.
Yeah.
That we've had to learn how to connect, how to endear ourselves to her without getting those gratification moments that endear you to your child.
Yes.
So I would say
a lot of parents, they get into parenting because, there's a side of them that's like, I want to get something out of this kid.
Yeah.
And that's not bad. I'm just saying they're expecting and then they'll love me unconditionally back. And you're going, yeah, my kid's over there and she does not know how to receive or share affection in the early stages is what I'm hearing.
When she was younger that Pietze's like, she literally doesn't know I'm in the same room.
Yeah. She doesn't know I'm in the same room. She doesn't cry for me or want me or, all of those things that I can remember the first time that I walked away and I could tell that she wanted me. Oh my gosh, it meant so much. And actually just the other day I was trying to think what her first word is because I forget these things all the time. Her first word was help. That was her very first word. And I just felt like that was so symbolic. I'm asking you for help. I need help. I'm reaching out to you to ask for help. So I would say that the whole foundation of my parenting is built off of compassion, and understanding. And so for me, I've had to really take a step back with my kids and look at what it might be like to be in their shoes, what they might be experiencing so that I can understand, so that I can be endeared to their nature, being dear to who they actually are and not look at the behavior
because
of what they're doing.
Because you especially don't have an ability to communicate really all that still with Yana. There's levels of communication that are evolving.
Yep.
But here, like, you don't know what's going on. All you
Yeah.
can see is emotions, and you have to navigate trying to discover what does that mean.
So yeah, she is verbal, but very limited verbally. So we can communicate to a certain extent, but there's a lot of things that go over her head. So she's a lot better with listening. She's gotten a lot better with, like, if we tell her to do something, she can do it. But if we ask her a question, that's really hard. Like, we don't know. She can't answer back, you know? And so I'd say, like, yeah, what a hard situation looks for us on a typical basis. Like, I'll just take potty training, for instance. Most people, potty training takes like a good month, but by the time you start to where, like, you know that they've got the hang of it, it took us a year.
Right.
An entire year of, like, literally cleaning up poop
on the floor.
Poop on the floor, pooping in the pants multiple times a day, you know, just a complete uphill battle, you know, and in that, I can't get frustrated with her.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Where it's like, we've been over this, and then she would go through like a month where she'd do really great, and then she'd regress again.
Which is,
you know,
a part of autism.
Yeah.
Is going forward and regressing.
And back. It's this kind of like seesaw, that you do, where it's like they'll make leaps and then you go back. So I had to really pull compassion, and I had to pull an empathy to say, hey, because I will be honest, that's one of the things that pushes my buttons. I don't like gross stuff. So dealing with poop, especially when you're dealing with like a 5-year-old's poop, you know, like that's
because you couldn't potty train her until a certain point
where we
where
knew,
she could understand
and even
it.
then we just took a leap. We're like, we don't know, this could fail miserably, but let's just go for it and try and see.
Right.
I kind of had this determination rise up within me where I was like, let's just see if we can do it. And I just had to really be patient. And luckily I have such a great support system in my husband.
Yes.
So times when I'm like, honey, I can't like clean up poop again. Like, I just actually can't do it. He's like, hey, no problem. You go into the bedroom, you have a moment, and I'll take care of it. And he would intervene and step in. But we really, because we knew that we couldn't treat the behavior.
Yep.
Like, because
Right.
the behavior wasn't actually,
Purposeful.
no, it wasn't purposeful at all. She wasn't trying to do this. Her brain couldn't compute it.
Yes.
And so the beautiful thing about parenting an autistic child is that it's actually retrained my brain in terms of how I parent my other child to understand, like, oh, so many times we're actually disciplining behavior and we're not actually looking at what the root symptom is and what's actually going on in their brain.
Powerful.
And I've had to really study the brain and study what's going on in a child's brain to understand my daughter. And it's also made me understand my son on a way deeper level.
Yeah,
And
because what you're basically saying is you've actually learned to put yourself in your kid's shoes.
Yeah.
So instead of getting angry when your daughter poops again and she's 4 and you've been working on potty training for a whole year and it's a mess.
Yep.
Instead of that, you're putting yourself in her shoes. And so what are some of the things that, like, you think it would be like to be like her that give you empathy and compassion?
Yeah. So one thing I recognize right away. So if I feel frustrated by something that my kids have done, I recognize, like, hey, that's my own trigger. That's my own emotions about this situation. And so I'll take a step back and deal with my own emotions before I deal with them, because they're not responsible for my emotions.
Yep.
Yeah.
They're not responsible to fix my emotions. So a lot of times I have to take a step back, deal with myself, and then I can come in.
So you're like, oh, I feel so out of control, or oh, this process feels wearing, or oh,
Yeah.
and that's my emotion.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. That's my emotion. Sorry, say your question one more time, because
What is it that you, like, when you put yourself in Yana's shoes, like, what are you thinking it must be like to be her?
yeah. So a lot of times then, so once I step back and I'm able to handle my own emotions about the situation, then I'm able to say, okay, probably she's feeling exactly how I'm feeling. She's feeling really frustrated. She's feeling really overwhelmed by the situation.
Yeah.
She's not sure what to do. She probably feels really confused. Like, hey, I just pooped in my pants again, but I don't know what to do with this. I don't know where to go, you know, or if it's like we give her an instruction and we've done it a billion times, that we do this every single time. And again, she messes it up again. I'm like, hey, she's really confused. I come from I believe that my kid's heart is actually good and they actually are coming from the deficit that they want to please us and they want relationship with us. And so I don't believe that they're inherently naughty.
Yep.
So good.
I don't believe that they're inherently bad. I actually believe that their heart is for connection towards us. So when there is behavior coming up, there's a level of disconnection
And I want to
that's happening.
I want to add something to that. So I think a lot of parents, like, you're over here with a special needs child, so you're having to become really aware that there is
that they think different than you.
They think different than you.
Yeah.
But other parents, they don't sit back. They don't necessarily say, "Oh, I have a special needs child." So it doesn't make them pause on think about how they're raising their child, because they go, "Oh, you should be able to understand
Why don't
me.
you understand this?"
Like their natural
we've been over
bent
it.
is like, "Why don't you understand this? Why are you being bad?" And the kid's like, "You don't understand that I don't understand you.
Yeah.
I'm too young. I don't get your language. I don't get context for a million things." And so parents are super rough on kids and they're getting angry and they're doing this. Their style of discipline is based on the idea that my kid is trying to be bad. They're trying to piss me off.
Yeah.
They're trying to ignore me.
They're
They
just
don't
not
care about
listening.
me.
They just are being lazy. They just don't care.
Rather than this, what
rather than
you
understanding
discover,
what's actually going on. So one thing, I'll just give a really practical example. So one thing is like for my son, who's a neurotypical, but he's a 2-year-old. He's highly emotional and he's in the 2-year-old phase, which I will say at the 2-year-old phase, here's what's happening. Okay. So children don't know how to regulate emotions. And this is one of the things. We'll say this is our first point.
First point
is that kids don't know how to regulate their emotions. Okay. It kicks in gradually over time, but think about a 2-year-old versus a 5-year-old. A 2-year-old gets disappointed. They throw themselves on the floor and scream.
Totally.
5-year-old gets disappointed. They'll probably cry, but they're not going to make a huge scene about it. And that's because of emotional regulation. They know, they start understanding the context of emotions and what to do with emotions.
Yeah.
Okay. But little kids don't know what to do with that. So when my son is having a meltdown, so this happened the other day, actually happens very often like this, but we're getting ready to go somewhere and I take him out to the car and he just loses it. Will not go in the car seat, is kicking and screaming. And I will preface this by saying some kids just don't like getting in the car seat.
Right.
You know, there are just those kids. But I know typically he doesn't fight me. Occasionally this happens. But what I've had to do is say, okay, I have to allow time for your emotions to be present, and that's okay, because my point is that I want to explore them, because they're actually a roadmap into understanding what's going on. So we were running late, but I actually I said, you know what we're about to do is not as important as me understanding what's going on with you. So I took a second, and what's happening with a 2-year-old is, and this is where they're almost like teenagers. So I think that there's 2 mirrored phases in kids' life. There's the 2-year-old phase and the teenage phase, where it's like they start to understand that they have independence.
They have choices.
And they have choices, but they don't know how to express the independence yet. So that shows up in a 2-year-old and it shows up in
a
teenager, you know? And so I'm like, so what's frustrating for him is that he has the understanding of the ability to make choices and wanting independence, but he doesn't have the language yet to express the choices and to express what he's actually wanting. So then it creates a meltdown, because oftentimes we misunderstand him, or he's trying to communicate, or he can't get the words out.
And
so then
I just want to say this really quick. This is having your daughter has actually taught you to look at kids in this way, because your daughter can't communicate. Her only way to communicate is screaming. And or having a meltdown. And so you've actually learned, instead of getting angry at, and this is why you could do it with Moses, and this is how there's gifts in every life thing that
1,000% if you look for them.
And so
such a gift.
One of the gifts of Yana, there's so many, but one of them is she has taught you, okay, when a kid is screaming, it's because they're wanting to communicate something and they don't know how. Like your brain is now connected. When Yana screams, it's because she doesn't know how to get information to me. So now when you have Moses and he's screaming, your brain is wired to think the same. Where most adults, we're
Yep.
treating
Well,
kids
you're
like
just
adults.
looking. You don't want to go in the car seat. You're acting bad,
Yeah.
or you're being naughty. You're having bad behavior. We need to discipline this out of you.
Right.
Where I actually believe, no, you're trying to communicate something to me,
Something.
and I need to slow down and understand.
Yeah.
Which parents hear that and they go, well, 20 minutes before I go anywhere, this woman's insane. I don't have the time in my life to slow down and do this, which leads me to the question, like, what's your actual goal? What's your life goal right now?
Yeah.
In this
So
season?
so one thing that I've had to put aside is saying my ultimate goal for this season of our life is to raise these kids well. Above anything, like, so it's my marriage and then it's these kids. Above anything I do, and we're business owners. I have my own business that I run, but my kids trump that.
Yep.
So I'm willing to actually set things aside because I say I only have these kids for so long.
Right.
And my job with these kids is actually to pour into them. And that's where my time, energy, and resource go to. So I will easily set other people aside or other
Yeah.
agendas in order to parent well.
But I will say
that's
this.
Yeah, go
Let
ahead.
me just jump in. Is that's not every time you get in the car.
No.
It's not like every time
No.
you get in the car, if they scream, you take 20 minutes to
No.
understand them.
And sometimes he is actually just being naughty. And
Yeah.
my husband, a lot of times it's my husband because he's more strict than I am. He'll step in and say, hey, you just got to
You
get
just
in the
need
car,
to go.
buddy. Or I'll do that too. Hey, you need to get in the car.
Yeah.
I'm not going to take every single time, but there's a lot of times where I've learned to allow room for my kids because I actually believe that failure is part of the process.
Yeah.
Like I actually give room that they can mess up. I give
Right.
room that we're not
For the
going to do this
messy part of
perfectly.
life.
Yep. You're not going to do this perfectly. I give room for meltdowns because they're a part of life. It's a part of learning and growing.
So what is
So-
it that you actually connected about your son? And
Yeah.
when he's
So
screaming?
he's screaming, will not go in the car seat. This happened like last week. And so we're running late and I just had to choose in that moment. I'm like, I am choosing to set this aside in order to understand his heart right now. So I sat him on the side. I got down on his level, got down on his level, looked at him in the eyes and I said, Moses, what's going on? What do you need? And he was so worked up. He could barely talk, but he was pointing to the door to go inside and he was saying, no, leave, no, leave. Okay. So I'm like, okay, well, normally you like to go somewhere. So let's
Right.
walk inside for a second. So we go inside. And as soon as he go inside, he's saying, where's Woody? Where's
Right.
Woody? So he had wanted to I told him he could take a toy with him about 20 minutes before we left. I'd forgotten and I just grabbed him. I said, hey, let's go. We need to go because we were running late.
Right.
He couldn't find his toy. He'd been looking for it. So we went back in, we found the toy.
And then he was happy
He
to go.
was great. And you know what? Here's the truth. And here's why I've realized it's worth it to set things aside. Had I pushed through and done I think we were late for a play date.
Yeah.
That play date would have been ruined. He would have had a
Right.
meltdown
The
the
entire
entire time.
pointless
He would have been in
anyways.
a bad mood. Then it's
because they can't self-regulate, not because
Yeah.
they're being brat kids.
No.
Not because they are trying to ruin the rest of their time. They actually don't at that age chemically in their brain have the capacity to shut the emotion
nope.
down.
They don't know what to do with it. So I have to give them the tools of what to do
how
with
to
it.
regulate that.
Yep. And so the truth is the whole play date is set up for him.
Right.
For him
Right.
to enjoy.
So who cares if you're late to it?
Yeah.
Because the point is that you want him to enjoy it.
Exactly.
So if you need to be late for him to
Yep.
enjoy it, then
Yep.
awesome.
Yep. And so I just said, hey, we're going to be 20 minutes late. I'm very sorry. We'll just have to cut our play date short.
Right.
We found the toy and we had way better time.
Yes.
And that's the truth. So one thing that I do in those moments is that I have learned, and this is the gift of my daughter again, because autistic children do not understand emotions because it's an abstract concept.
Right.
So she's very smart, like
Oh,
literally
she's
a
a
genius.
genius.
She's
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
smart. She's not Rain Man by any means, but
she could
she's
be.
yeah, she could be, honestly. But emotion is an abstract concept.
Yes.
So that's hard for any child to understand in general, but then autistic kids really struggle with an abstract. It's something you can't see. It's not concrete. You
Right.
have to read somebody's face
Yeah.
and actions to understand emotion.
Yeah.
So one thing I do with my kids is help them to identify emotions.
So this is number 2.
Yeah.
Teach your children emotional health.
Yep. So yeah, teaching my kids emotional health. This would be number 2 is, so in the middle of a meltdown, and I had to learn this with Yana because I realized, so with autistic kids, they don't naturally always pick things up. It's more that everything has to be taught and it has to be broken down in small, tiny steps. So if I'm teaching you to go pick up a cup of water and drink it, I can just show you and a kid would normally pick that up.
Right.
For her, I'm breaking it down into reach your hand out, grab the cup,
Wow.
Right.
pick it up, put it over and over again. We're doing these steps over and over again. So how I teach emotions is like, so we have an emotion chart that has all the faces of emotion on it. What somebody
Wow.
looks like when they're mad, what somebody looks like when they're angry, what they look like when they're sad.
Yeah.
And then I can help her identify, oh, are you feeling sad? And then we point to the emotion
Right.
of
Wow.
the face. Oh, I'm feeling sad right now. So I do that a lot when we're reading books. This is a great way to introduce emotional health to your kids from an early
Yes.
age. When you read books to them, a lot of times there's a narrative going on with characters that'll involve different emotions and start to point it out and
And a lot of
explain.
them have pictures, so you can
Yeah.
actually say, what kind of face does that look like
Yeah.
they're making?
Yep, exactly. So we'll say, and now my little son is so great with doing it. He like loves pointing out emotions. He'll say, "Oh, Buzz mad,
Yeah.
Woody happy."
Yeah.
You know, because we're teaching them we're teaching them how to identify emotions. Because I will find, and I'm sure you guys can so relate with this with my clients, one of the biggest things is that they can't even identify
100%.
their
Number
emotions.
one.
They don't know.
I
what
could
they're
tell them
feeling.
about their whole inner life, and they're like, I don't know if I feel that. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Oh,
Yes, you
Yes.
do.
Yes,
100%.
you do.
Yep.
But we'll get there. And then they're
Yeah.
like, oh my God, I did feel sad. How did you know?
Yeah. Like part of our
Yeah.
struggle is actually just starting at ground 1, which should have been taught in childhood.
Yes.
And we're just starting to learn this now. Psychology is really catching up
Yep.
with this. Whereas like our parents' generation, you didn't talk about this
Totally.
kind of stuff. You didn't
No,
talk
not at
about
all.
feelings, and we're realizing how much it's messing people up in their
Yes.
later years that we're starting to grab a hold of this. So a great way to teach your kids emotional health is just by identifying emotions. So in the moment, so we do it through stories, we do it through movies, but then in the moment, if I can identify like, oh, you're not actually mad that we're going somewhere. You're not throwing a fit because you're angry and you're mad and you're being naughty. You're sad. You're feeling really sad because I misunderstood you.
Right.
Because I overrode. I told you could take a toy and then I didn't follow through with it. So you're feeling sad. Are you feeling sad? You know?
Yeah, this is something you do a lot. So when Moses is screaming,
Yeah.
you will actually you'll think through and you put yourself in your kids' shoes a lot.
Yeah.
What would it be like to be them?
Yep.
What is going on in their
Yep.
little mind?
Which also demands that you be present with yourself and self-aware of your environment as an adult, a parent, that you're understanding what's going on here and then what's going on in his world.
Yes, absolutely. And it is a lot of times I'm introverted, so I give myself times out with my kids
Totally. You
where
lock
I'm
yourself
like,
in the bathroom.
Yep. Luckily, my daughter goes to school. My son still naps at this point, but I even do, like Abby knows all the time. I'm like, I have to lock myself in the bathroom for a second so we can finish this conversation. But of course my husband is around, but even then, like sometimes like while he's napping, that's my alone time, or my kids will be watching. I'll put on a movie for them. I'm popping in a headphone in one ear and I'm listening to a podcast so that I don't have to interact with them. But then this is kind of off the subject, but it is really important, is that I take time every day to just connect on their level so that I'm being fully present with them.
Yeah. And that doesn't look like hours and hours and hours.
It looks like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I try to at least 10 minutes a day do something where I'm pouring into their bank account. And that's what I've realized.
Without a phone, without distraction, you're on their level and you're doing something
Which is
with
so
them.
good.
Yep, absolutely. And so
Super necessary.
Yep. So that would be to the third point.
No, wait, hold on.
Oh, go ahead.
We haven't finished with
Okay.
the teaching emotions.
Okay,
So
yeah.
a lot of times Moses will be screaming And you'll put yourself in his shoes, and then you'll be like, I think maybe he's angry. And you'll say, Moses, are you feeling angry?
Yeah. So this is where compassion and empathy are so huge, because I'm able to take, and again, I have to process my own trigger. Okay, I feel really out of control right now. I'm feeling really
Because
angry myself.
Both my kids are screaming.
I'm overwhelmed, and that's so normal to feel that. You're going to feel that on a
Totally.
regular basis. It's okay to feel that. I'm not always like Zen calm parent.
No.
You know, like I go have my moment.
You have meltdowns.
I vent it out. I
you
cry.
vent.
Yep. And then I come back and I imagine what they're feeling.
Yeah.
I imagine what's actually going on. I try to put myself in their shoes to understand and to try to connect in that way. And so then I help them to name the emotion.
Yeah. And so when Moses says, you're like, are you feeling angry? He'll be like, yes. And then you have kind of two responses that then you do. Like one of them is, yeah, it's really sad sometimes to feel angry.
So a lot of times I'll say, I can understand why you feel angry. It's okay to feel angry that this happened. You know, now sometimes I'll say it's okay to feel angry, but it's not okay to throw a toy if you feel angry, you know, but I let them know it's actually okay to feel this emotion, because let me just say right now, part of overcoming an emotion is actually walking into it, feeling it, identifying it, and then getting to the other side of it.
Yeah. So
does that make sense?
I've seen you validate, like, it's okay to feel angry, but we need to actually stop now.
Yep. And we do put a boundary. So kids love boundaries. So we'll put a boundary on it. Like, it's okay to feel angry, but now we're going to move on to something different. And what putting a boundary looks like with their emotion is actually the art of like redirecting, getting them out of the moment. Sometimes their brain will get stuck on something. I've seen this with Yana so much. This is what this taught me, because her brain will get stuck on something. And I'm like, okay, we need to redirect because you're cycling through this emotion, and now you need a boundary with it.
Get out of the loop.
Yep. So we're going to redirect and do something else.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay, so the next one, there's no such thing as perfect for you or your kids.
Yeah. So this is really a big one. So we have decided from day one that there's no such thing as perfect. Like, we are not going to be perfect parents, and we are not going to have perfect kids.
Why wouldn't you want to be a perfect parent? Why wouldn't you want perfect
Seriously.
kids?
Seriously.
Yeah, it's such an illusion.
It is such an
Complete
illusion.
illusion.
And you have to use so much control and shame,
And you end up
guilt.
you end up beating the childlikeness out of a child.
And you
Absolutely.
beat yourself up so much.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny to me because I'm like, well, treat kids like they need to act like adults. Like, you need to behave well. You need to have, you need to have good emotions here. And then we don't even do that ourselves.
No.
Like, we're grumpy at Starbucks.
Like, we're not
chewing out somebody.
regulating.
We're like, we have the ability to walk away from a situation if it's too intense for us.
Yeah.
Kids don't have that ability,
No,
but then we
that's right.
treat them like you cannot react to this.
Right.
You know, like, we treat them like adults, but adults that don't even exist.
Yeah.
Imagine
You
if
know?
you did that to an adult in a Starbucks line where like they couldn't walk away from the situation. They had to stay in
You
it,
need
and
to
they
throw
had
a
to stay
fit.
perfect when they were about to throw a fit. No way.
Oh, yeah. And so that, again, like, you have to think in the context of like, I don't even make myself do this. I
Right.
can walk away from an argument.
Totally.
If it's too intense for me, my kids don't have that ability.
Yeah.
You know?
They're not allowed to walk away when I'm talking to them.
Yeah,
intensely.
exactly.
They're not allowed to say, stop talking to me like that.
Yep, exactly. And so they don't get to really have boundaries. So we really have set up like basically just a culture of like failure is part of the process. And I think of raising kids like baking a cake with a child. You're learning together and you're doing it together, and I'm going to mess up and you're going to mess up, but we're on the journey together. Now, I'm not going to chew you out and punish you for getting eggshell in the cake when you've never cracked an egg
Totally.
to put in the cake before. I'm going to come alongside you and say, oh no, you got eggshell in the cake. We actually can't leave eggshell in the cake. We got to scoop it out. Let's try to figure out together how we can scoop the eggshell out. It's not that I'm saying eggshell's okay.
Right.
Just put all the eggshells you want in there.
Totally.
You know, and obviously we're speaking metaphorically.
Right.
But I've taken away the punishment. You're not going to be punished for messing up. You're not going to be punished for doing something wrong. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not consequences to actions.
Right.
That's not what I'm saying. And we definitely discipline our kids.
Can you define the difference between punishment and consequences?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Well, for me, one of the people I work with actually says discipline or consequences is looking forward and punishment is looking back. So punishment is I remove love from you in order to teach you about how bad you were. And discipline is for where you're going and who you're becoming.
Yes.
This behavior will get in your way.
I love that. And one of the ways that I think about discipline in my own life and in my relationship with God and my relationship with myself is that I'm like, discipline to me is like a breath of fresh air, because it's saying, hey, you're going down the wrong path. And I'm going to help redirect you here because I actually care about you. So it's almost like I picture it like Mario Kart, where it's like when you fly off the track and remember how the little cloud would come, it'd come and then take you and then put you on the right way.
Yes.
I'm like, that's what discipline looks like. It's actually like, oh, I was feeling confused. I didn't know what to do. And it's like, like somebody bigger than you comes in and says, hey, you're going the wrong way. Let me help you. Yeah. It's not punishing. It's actually relieving. It's saying, oh man, I felt so lost within the context of the situation.
Right.
You know, so we allow failure to be a part of the process.
And I think that's, again, part of the beauty of having a daughter who screams all the time in Walmart or Target if something is overstimulating her, or if she has something she wants and she can't get it. Like, you actually learned, I can't be perfect.
No.
Like, that's been the best. I mean, I think that's
1,000%.
It breaks
and I have to let go of
perfection
control.
and control.
Yeah,
because I can't control this.
Yes,
I can't make you be different.
Nope, I can't. And it pushes what I've had to recognize is I want to get upset at her because it's pushing my buttons. It's pushing my shame buttons. Oh, they're looking at me, which we get stares all the time. We get stupid comments all the time.
Totally.
You know? And so I'm like, oh, this is pushing my own shame buttons, my own like, oh, my need to please other people. And that's my own issue. That's not her fault. And she can't actually help what's happening. Now, I'm not saying with a typical kid that you don't, and even with an autistic child, we really try to work on it.
Things you manage.
Yep, we constantly try to work on it. We don't always give in, you know, but I've had to really remove my own triggers from the situation, and it's been so helpful because I'm like, yeah, I look like a failure constantly to people in typical society, when I'm like, that's a win that I was able to let my kids scream through the store and I didn't react to you. I just let it happen without like,
so you're like, I'm doing the best parenting I've ever done, but the world is looking at it.
Yeah.
And they're thinking I'm a failure as a parent.
Yeah. And again, I will just say this typically with strangers, you know, you get on an airplane or you're in a store, strangers expect your kids to act like better than adults do.
Right.
Yeah.
When children don't even understand what's going on, they don't know how to self-regulate. And we have so many hidden, you know, special needs now that it's like, okay, let's just give kids the benefit of the doubt here. Right. I'm not saying parents are doing a bad job, but let's cut them some slack, for goodness sakes, you know?
And one of the things, so what you've really had to learn to do is to take your identity out of what other people think or say about you.
Yep.
So as a part of being I don't know if it's the word healthy parent.
Yep.
Or part of living as a parent who is able to have compassion on their kids and love them, is my identity or my value is not in other people's opinions or perspectives.
Yep. It's been the biggest gift with autism, because I know I'm getting judged all the time. That's one of my big fears, is that I will get judged, but it's just natural that it happened because my kids, Yana looks like a naughty kid. Yeah. You know,
she doesn't look like if you were to see her randomly, you wouldn't think, physically, she must have special needs. You don't think that. You just see her, if you just see her from a distance go crazy, you're like,
oh, what a brat.
What a brat.
Yeah, what a brat. Like, they're just melting down because they want this toy and
totally.
They're freaking out. Like, spank your kid. When really her brain can't compute why we would go to a store
and not take
it with us. Like, she cannot understand that concept.
She doesn't understand.
She cannot understand that.
The toys
and you can't explain to her. And time doesn't make a difference to her. You can't say, oh, well, we will get this at a birthday or that doesn't make sense. Time isn't a concept. You know, so yeah, there is a such thing as hidden disability. So we look normal. So that's where a lot of the judgment comes in, which has actually been a huge gift to me because I've had to let go and be like, you know what? It doesn't matter. I'm doing what's best for my child and what's best for our situation. But then the other thing is that I allow myself to fail and I'm okay with failure.
This is the next part of that, which is it's not that you expect there's no such thing as perfect for the kids, but there's also no such thing as perfect for the parent.
Yeah.
So talk about that.
Yep. So on a regular basis, my husband and I will, because we have so many high stakes situations, we'll get into a situation that causes huge meltdowns and we'll walk away from the situation and go, okay, here's what we did really well. Here's what did not go so well, because we will trigger.
Totally.
Occasionally I will get frustrated and be like, oh, I'll feel flustered. I'll feel totally like, oh my gosh, or we'll turn on each other.
Right.
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Which is a hard one. And we try to really commit if we know that we're going into a sensitive situation. Hey, we're probably going to have a meltdown at the end of this. How we make a game plan for how we're going to handle it.
That's good.
You know, so before we get into the high stakes situation, we say, this is going to be a high stakes situation. Probably our kids will melt down, or this will probably push buttons inside of us.
Yep.
Yeah.
So how do we want to handle it? How are we, when it starts to happen, what's going to be our game plan and how are we going to function together?
And so if you're a parent who has neurotypical kids, that might be like, hey, when we get all the kids ready for school every morning, it's a meltdown. How do we set ourselves up for success before we get into that moment?
Or if we know, hey, we're going to Thanksgiving with all the family around, there's going to be these issues. Let's make a game plan before we put ourselves in a situation that we know is everyone's going to trigger, everyone's going to have high stakes emotions, a game plan for how we're going to handle the kids and how we're going to act towards each other.
And what you're saying in that is there's a concept of partnership. Like the underlying thing that you're saying is I am walking out this journey deliberately choosing partnership with my spouse. And a lot of times the biggest meltdowns that happen, I believe, as I've watched families come and go, isn't actually the kids. It's the meltdown where there's a lack of partnership
100%.
with the parents.
Yep, absolutely.
They turn against each other. They're at war with each other rather than saying, hey, we're in something together. We need to be on each other's team.
And the times where we feel most defeated in an interaction with our kids are the times where Johnny and I turned on each other and we didn't have each other's backs because we're like, hey, it's hard enough what we're dealing with. Anytime you're dealing with kids, it's just hard. Raising kids is not easy. No. But then when we're not on each other's team, that feels way harder. That makes it so much worse, you know? So we have had to say like, hey, we're not going to do this perfectly. We're going to mess up and there's room to mess up. There's room for you to mess up and there's room for me to mess up and there's grace for that.
And one of the things is and I love when you talk about this, there's no such thing as perfect parenting. Like you're going to mess your kids up.
Oh yeah. So one of the things that my husband and I always joke about all the time, we say, oh yeah, we're already saving up for our kids' therapy bills because even if we do everything right, we still understand the concept that you could have well-meaning intentions and still cause your kids pain. We see it all the time in life as consultants.
Oh yeah, the interpretation.
You cannot control the way that your kid will interpret something that you do.
Because they don't have logic.
Yep.
So even if you're doing something that is logically as an adult the most loving thing you could do for a kid.
Yep.
They may not interpret it that
so
way.
Let me explain a situation just recently with a client real quick is that she was really excited about something. Her mom got home and it was a really hard day. And she was trying to explain something to her mom, like, Mom, watch this dance that I'm doing. And her mom said, can you please just leave me alone? I need a moment in the bathroom. Now, who knows if she even said it that harshly, but that's how the child interpreted it and locked herself in the bathroom. That child has no context for like, what is actually happening? She just is having a rough day. Yeah. Has nothing to do with me.
Yep.
All she felt is rejection from the parent.
Totally.
And so then rejection is pain.
No.
And you can have so many great interactions with your kids. And then
you can do everything right.
One moment that you don't do it and they interpret, they have rejection on them. They've taken that into adulthood.
Oh, now mom's angry, even though like 10 times out of 11, she responded so patiently.
Gentle, kind.
Yeah.
One time she responds angry and that now has affected them.
Yep, totally. And so even if you do all the things right, there's still this form of miscommunication that will happen with a child because they're living in your world and you're not a perfect human and life isn't perfect and the way that they interpret it. And so we're not going to do it perfectly.
Their brains aren't fully formed and their logic isn't fully formed. And their understanding of the world isn't fully formed. And kids are made to think everything is about them, which is really beautiful and terrible.
Yeah, absolutely. And so either way, you're going to mess up your kids in some way. There's going to have to be conversations. There's going to have to be healing that has taken place. So we've already prepared for that. Hey,
you've accepted it.
We've accepted it that like, hey, we're not going to do things right. It has nothing to do. There's no shame that I didn't do it perfectly.
Yep. And I even talked to people who come in my office and they've, they're maybe dealing with the fallout of something that happened with their kid in their childhood. And I've maybe worked with the children and stuff. And the parents like, I don't know. I'm such a failure. I don't know. I just tried my best. And I sit there and I tell them like, look, Abby and I, if and when we have kids, they're going to be sitting in someone else's office just like this,
100%.
going down the road of they cared more about talking about emotions than they did just being present with me and doing
They made me talk about things,
like whatever. And they're going to take and make whatever interpretation out of it. And I think that part of this conversation that's really powerful right now is for the parents that are out there listening who have been excessively hard on yourselves. Now, there are some parents that go, I did the best I can and I don't care what this kid has to say. They need to suck it up and get over it. There's one extremism over there. There's another one where parents live in the perpetual shame of I'm just failing my kids. All I did was fail my kids. And we're here to say you can let go of the shame over yourself. No matter how well you do it, you're going to make mistakes. The goal is going on the journey along the way on even the backside of the whole thing and going, all right, how do we repair?
And this is so important. This is what I tell parents all the time. I'm like, the way you treat yourself over parenting is teaching your children more than you understand.
Absolutely.
So if you hate yourself every time you make a mistake or if you beat
feel
yourself
it,
up,
even if you don't say it.
You are teaching them they need to be perfect. The way you teach yourself, so if you're good at forgiving yourself and good at asking for forgiveness from them, then you are teaching them to be good at forgiving themselves and to be good at asking for forgiveness.
That we're going to make a mess, but we're going to clean it up together. And again, it goes back to this cake baking analogy that I have. It's like, imagine that you're baking a cake only from a written recipe. You've never seen somebody do it. You've never cracked an egg before. It's like you have kind of a roadmap, but it's like you aren't going to do it perfectly, but we can clean up the mess together.
That's interesting that you say that because like most recipes aren't going to go, now crack the egg and make sure there's no it's just going to say 3 eggs. Do I throw the entire egg in there?
Yeah. Do I just put the egg and like then crunch it up and
like what do you do?
Exactly. And it might take some failed tries, so.
And I feel like this is so important for parents to be like, the more compassionate I am towards myself, I'm teaching my kids to be compassionate with themselves. Because the more I punish myself with guilt and shame, the more they learn to punish themselves. The harder I am on me as a parent, I am teaching them through how I treat myself, how they should treat themselves. And that is so important. And that is why I'm like, no, actually running after your shame and your guilt and learning compassion and embracing imperfection. Because what Pietze said is so profound. There is no perfect. She's literally shattering the idea. There is no perfect. So if you're striving to be the perfect parent, you're striving for an unattainable goal, which means you will feel shame the entire time.
Because
and that will regulate the way that you respond and react to your children the entire time as well.
100%.
Which is going to compound all the great problems that you have because you're functioning from shame, not out of self-love, forgiveness, grace.
When you function out of shame, you are much more defensive. You're much more angry. You're much more blamey. You have a shorter temper. When you're compassionate with yourself, you naturally have more patience and gentleness for your kids. You naturally have more compassion and empathy for them.
It just flows freely. It's so true. And really part of it too is that you have to connect to a compassionate God. Like I feel so much compassion in my relationship with God that it's easy for me to understand how to have compassion with my kids and how to have compassion with myself because I'm connected to eternal love in that way.
Okay. So one of the other things that you have is about parenting with Johnny.
Okay, so my husband and I actually have very different views of parenting in a lot of ways. So he's way more of the disciplinarian, and I'm way more easygoing.
Yeah.
And so one thing that we've had to do is really give room for each other's parenting styles and yet still be on the same team.
Yeah.
So what that looks like is, you know, I don't love all the ways that Johnny chooses to handle a situation, nor does he love all the ways that I choose to handle a situation. But
who's right?
well, I mean, I am, but whatever. That's fine. He's not here to defend himself, so I'll just take that
Hopefully
one.
he doesn't listen either.
You know, but I've had to make room to say, oh, there are times where I'm like, I wish, but I've had to shut my mouth and say, hey, because there is no perfect, if he does this and it doesn't go well, that's okay. And we'll talk about it later and we'll come back together later, and giving him room to do his parenting style.
There's room for him to fail.
Yeah, there's room
And
for
there's
him
room
to
for
fail.
you to fail.
Yep. And there's times where he has to bite his tongue because he's like, you are letting that kid run all over you. Like, you need to put your foot down.
Right.
But he will just let it happen. I mean, eventually I'll say this. We're trying to think of like an example. Like, you know, there are times where, you know, I'll play too much into empathy and compassion and too much into trying to understand when really they're tired and they just need a boundary and they need to be done.
Totally.
And he's like, you just need to put that kid to bed. And he'll step in and say, hey, I've let you try this out, but I feel right now that you're just being run over and we need to actually set a boundary here and put the kid to bed. Now, if we do get into a place where we are like disagreeing and having a really hard time, we don't talk about it in the moment.
This is so huge.
Yeah.
This is where I think a lot of disrespect comes. And this is where a lot of women emasculate men in front of the kids, or men. I think it's less common that men emasculate women in front of the kids, but it goes either way.
Yeah, it can go either way. And so, you know, we might say something for sure that's inevitable, or we'll say, hey, honey, I feel this way. But we don't argue about how we're going to parent or parenting styles in front of our kids.
Yep.
We deal with the moment. We try to get through it as best we can. And then when we're away from our kids, that is something that we talk about away. That's something we do not talk about in front of our kids, because it's something where we need to come back together and be on the same team, where we need to hash it out. And so we're committed to being on the same team, even if we do it differently.
And I think that there's a time and a place as kids grow older and evolve and see that mom and dad care.
Yeah, absolutely.
For parents to actually have disagreements in front of them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And watch their parents work through a disagreement without the
All the way
explosions,
to-
all the way to the other side, get to a conclusion, get to the honor and respect, and go, oh, the world doesn't end if mom and dad do have a disagreement. But it's when kids can even you can have the conversation with the kids. Like, oh, this is what we were working through. This is why we allowed you to see this. This is how we forgave each other. Where you could have this whole, this full
I think
circle.
when it comes to, and this is just maybe my belief, I think when it comes to specific arguments about the kids, it's better to have those away from the kids, because you'll
They
say
think it's
things.
about them.
They
Right.
think they can interpret that about being about them.
Yeah.
And then you're able to freely say things in the moment. Like, I feel like he's acting like this, without them taking that on as an identity.
Yeah.
You know, so
Exactly.
like, yeah, I 100% agree. Like, you should actually start to,
conflict.
but
conflict doesn't necessarily have to be over the children that you do
Yes.
in front of them. It can be like, hey, we're going to have conflict about
money or schedule or
whatever, and allow them watch us to work that out. But
Absolutely.
I'm not going to run over each other with how we're frustrated about the kid in front of the kid.
Well, also, I think as the kids get older too, then they know how to play you, because they're like, this
Yeah.
parent thinks this and this parent thinks that.
Yep,
Well,
and
I'm
I'm gonna
gonna
use that as
rather than you're
ammunition.
not having a united front, where we need to
Yep.
have a united front
Yep.
with our kids.
And so there was, I think you have a great example with Moses of parenting, where you tried Johnny's way and he tried your. Explain
Yeah.
that.
So, our son really was acting out a ton this fall, and we're just like, this is not working. Like, he is not obeying. There's no peace in the house. So my husband said, okay, let's try it my way. I think we need to get stricter on discipline. So we tried it and it didn't work. Like, I said, okay, let's try it. I kind of felt differently, but I was like, let's just try it. Didn't work.
Right. And that's part of respecting your partner. And
Yeah.
it's part of the failing forward. We're going to try yours. Even if I don't think that this is the right idea,
Right.
we're going to try it.
Yeah.
Because that is a part
Yep.
of us learning and growing together.
Yep.
And you need to feel like you have as much of a say in this journey as me.
Yep.
Yep.
And the truth is, what might not work for one season might work for another.
Totally.
Absolutely.
There might be that
And
all of
what-
a sudden
it
that's
may not
needed
work
at
for one
5
kid,
years
and
old.
It might work for another.
Yep.
Yep, absolutely. And so one of the things that we realized is that our goal with him and our goal for our household was peace.
Yeah.
We don't have a lot of peace right now. You're disrupting the peace. You're angry. And actually by disciplining more, it was creating less peace.
Yeah.
He's getting more angry. We're getting more angry. It just wasn't working. So then I said, let's try it my way. So I was like, I actually think that I think part of why he's acting out is because he's crying out for a relationship and connection.
Attention.
And he doesn't know how to get it.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, what if we commit to spending time with him, pouring into his bank account before we discipline him?
Yeah.
So it's taking intentional time every day to connect with him. And then also praising the good behavior and almost at times ignoring the bad behavior. Because the more we play into it, because then he's thinking, oh, I'm getting attention from mom and dad.
Uh-huh.
They're
Okay, so
paying
I'm getting
attention to
connection.
me.
We're interacting. So if he hits and then we're like, don't hit. And he's like, oh, I'm going to hit you again
'Cause
because
I
you're paying attention to me.
Yep.
We're interacting. We're wrestling.
So you're like,
You
we
know?
want to make sure we are giving you enough attention
In a
that
healthy
this is
way.
Not
Outside of you, outside of your behavior.
Yeah.
That we're pouring into your bank account. And then from there, then when you are acting out, we can redirect. And we saw a huge change in him.
Yeah.
We also started to call out the good behavior in him and
Yeah.
started to give him affirmation like, hey, I love it when you share with mommy. I love
Yes.
when you hug mommy so gently. Oh, thank you so much for helping. And
Because
we just saw
normally
him.
we don't mention that when you do a good hug, you're not like, oh, that was good job hugging. We're only saying like, you're
Ouch,
killing
that
me.
hurts mommy.
Yes.
Stop pinching mommy. You know, we're constantly on the negative about everything that they're doing wrong. And so we noticed when we did that a huge shift. I mean, it changed that kid almost completely, where he all of a sudden we could see him almost puff up.
Totally.
Like, oh my goodness. So then like when we started to really play into the good behavior, he started to do the good behavior more because he was getting so much positive affirmation. If we said, oh, thank you so much for helping mommy pick up the toys.
Right.
Then he's like, let's clean up these toys now, you know,
It's like, yay, I'm getting so much attention.
yeah, and there was peace. We felt more at peace. I felt more at peace in my relationship with him. When I understood, oh, he's crying out for connection. We were getting good connection.
Yes.
I was, again, it doesn't have to be a half an hour. It was 10 minutes, at least once a day. If I'm doing really great, it's 3 times a day.
Totally.
If I don't have time, it's once a day that it's 10 minutes,
Right.
you know, that I'm connecting, I'm pouring into you, you know, and that made a huge difference. But Johnny then was humble enough to say, yeah, let's go on your journey, and saying, hey, this does actually work. I have seen a change in him. It has brought more peace to the house, and the goal is peace and harmony within the home.
Right. So basically, the 5th point that you're talking about is learning how to parent together with the humility. Neither one of us know what we're doing.
Yeah.
This is the first time both of us have parented.
Yep.
Yep.
Neither one of us are perfect.
Yep.
And so
Neither one of us knows best.
We're going to try both people's. And even when I think I know better, I'm still going to like have respect and honor because you're both bending in towards each other.
Yep.
Even though you have different. So I think because you guys do a great job of we respect each other even though we're different. So Johnny might be more strict with him when he's one-on-one with them. And I'm not going to manage that.
Nope.
I'm not going to tell him what he needs to do differently.
Nope.
But when I'm with him, I might be different than with him. And we can do that without it creating war between us.
And I have to also give room to like, you're responsible for your relationship with the kids, and I'm responsible for my relationship with the kids.
I can't control
And
your
I can't
relationship.
control your relationship. Now, we can discuss it. We can be on the same page. But at the same time, there's something where if you feel comfortable with that, and as long as it's, you know, not abusive, I have to give room for you to be able to go on your journey in your relationship with the kids.
Yes.
Even if you fail and you have to do some cleanup, you know, or if I fail and I have to do some cleanup.
And that's so healthy because one of the biggest problems in parenting is when one parent gets controlling of the other one and then the other one either becomes passive or stubborn or obstinate.
Yeah.
And it just creates a mess.
Yep. And there is no right way. You're not right.
Totally.
You're not right. And you have to be humble about
because
that.
the truth is, I think Johnny is right a lot of times when he's like, no, we need to set a
Oh
boundary.
yeah, and thank
And I think
goodness for
you're
Johnny.
right, a lot of times.
Yep.
And oftentimes people marry somebody who's opposite of them.
Yep, absolutely.
And it's because we're meant to be more whole together.
Yep.
I always say this, me and Justin are opposite in a lot of ways. And it's because we become our best when we bend in towards each other.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes what happens is we like defend our stance more because
Yeah.
of the other person is opposite. So
Yeah.
we're trying to pull them onto our side.
Yeah.
So we actually become more extreme
Yep.
instead of bending in.
Yep.
But so that is, I think it's really important to learn how to let go of control
Yep.
with your partner and work towards partnership. Now,
Absolutely.
for those of you who are single parents, we have the most respect for you.
Oh, I hands down, and I will say my husband toured for a long time. And I would be with our daughter by myself, and it gave me more compassion for single parents than anything. When I would feel sad and at the end of myself, I would think of single parents, and I would just pray like, God, the single parents out there, like give them grace,
on.
because it's all I could do to say, I'm taking the situation. I can empathize with your situation.
Yeah.
That is so, single parents are the heroes. They are the heroes
It's real.
of humanity. I'm convinced. I'm just blown away by you.
Yeah.
Yes, there is, because you don't get a timeout when you're at your max
Nope.
capacity. You still have to choose in.
Yep.
You get pushed
There's
far
a
beyond your
special
breaking
place in
point.
heaven for single parents. I'm telling you that
Yes.
much. Seriously.
So the sixth thing, and we're just gonna breeze through this because we're almost at the end of this, but
Yeah.
is to focus on having a healthy marriage to be good parents.
Yeah.
And this is something that if you're married.
Yeah.
So if you're a single parent, like we just said, we have the most honor and respect for you.
Absolutely.
And you're doing incredible.
Yep. And you're going to have to get your needs met and you're going to have to make sure like, okay, I need good relationships
I need good friends.
Yeah.
good friends that I'm getting my needs met from on an adult level so that I can
Yes.
pour into my kids.
100%. But what I wanted to say about I know so many people who they really care about parenting.
Yeah.
They don't care about their marriage.
Yeah.
They are so intentional about, I'm reading all the parenting
Yep.
books. I take
Yep.
them to,
Yep.
I drive them 5 days a week for 4 hours every day. I make sure they do all the sports they want and all the activities they
Yep.
want. I invest all my life into my kids. But I'm not reading books about marriage. I'm not working on my sex
Yep.
life.
Yep.
I'm
not working on myself as an individual.
Totally.
And I will say I empathize because I know once you have kids, it is so consuming. I mean,
Yes.
you basically are learning. I have no need. I cannot have a need. That's what
Right.
it feels like. I can't
Right.
have needs, especially in the beginning. In those, when you have young kids, it is servitude.
Totally.
However, within that, part of your responsibility as a parent is to be pouring into your own relationship with God, your own relationship with yourself, and your relationship with your spouse. And I feel like maybe this is extreme, but to me, half of a good parent is taking care of the other half, which is your partner.
Yeah.
And because what I display in the context of our relationship will speak more to my kids than anything else.
Well, and they actually say, so they can tell how good a couple's marriage is by testing their kids' urine.
Yeah,
And
this is insane.
Crazy to me.
This is scientific.
Yeah. And I forget his name is John
Gottman.
John Gottman.
And
Was
he's
talking about some of the different things that he participated in, and knowing early on, he could tell, they kind of have this test where within an hour, they can tell you up to a 90% accuracy.
Yeah, 90%.
1 hour with a couple, and they can tell you up to
Yep.
90% accuracy if they'll stay together or if they'll break up and everything will fall apart based on certain behaviors that are taking place. And I think it's up to a half hour. They can guess up to
80%.
80 or 85%, somewhere in there, percent accuracy to it. So one of the tests that they I don't know if they conducted it or they learned it from somewhere else, was they would test the urine inside of a child, and the urine inside of the child, you could see the levels of cortisol.
Mm-hmm.
And when there were intense high levels of cortisol, they knew right off.
The parents were fighting.
Parents were fighting because a kid doesn't live at that level with heightened levels of cortisol if
Without
there's peace and
Yeah.
love inside of the relationship.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which I thought was pretty Like that was one of those like catch you in your chest, like catch your breath in your chest.
Like, whoa.
Statistics.
Which tells you also that those kids are in perpetual fight, flight, or freeze mode
Yep.
with
Yep.
cortisol levels that high,
So
which
then
means they're going to
not
be on guard
responding.
and they're not responding. They're in
Yep.
reaction at all times to survive.
They're not going
Yep.
to be their best self. They're
Yep.
not. They're not going to be the loving, good, kind
Yep, absolutely.
kids that
Yep.
you're wanting.
And your marriage is setting the culture for the family.
Yeah.
Yep.
What is the culture in our family? It happens within the context of your marriage and then spills over into the way that you parent your kids, into the culture. So you can do all the great parenting things and read all the books, but if you're not taking care of that, that will spill over more than anything else. And I will just say with our kid, with one of our children really quick, with Yana, you know, she is, because she doesn't have language to express things, Johnny and I have noticed that if we are fighting more, she will regress into her symptoms more. So it's a
Wow.
really clear mirror that when we're, oh, why is she suddenly regressing? We're like, whoa, we've actually been arguing more and her stress is up. And so
she
when
doesn't know what to do
she
with the
doesn't know what to
stress.
do with it.
I want to
You know?
I want to add something to that because I will have a lot of parents come in and they'll talk about how, you know, terrible that their kids are acting out. And because they have a relationship with shame, they're unwilling to look at themselves.
Yeah.
The parents are, they're shame set. They're scared of just being like,
Yep.
the bit. If they do have a conversation about themselves, it's, I'm just a failure. And that's
Oh,
their
yeah.
shame speaking rather than going, no, I think I'm probably actually failing my kids.
Rather than taking ownership.
Yep,
Yeah.
taking ownership and being
Yeah.
like, there is something, there is a mirror being
Yep.
reflected to me
Yep.
right now, I bet. And I don't know what they're telling me about my relationship with myself or my relationship with my spouse, but I'd like to figure that out.
Yeah.
And so one of the things when I, you know, get past a lot of their shame, I start having them ask the question, what are my children mirroring to me? And I, you know, that's even another thing that we tell people to look at is what is our sex life mirroring to us about our vulnerability and our intimacy with our spouse? And also what are my children mirroring to me about my relationship with my spouse
And that's-
So you
or
have
myself?
kids who are screaming at each other all the time. Well, are you yelling at them?
Yeah.
Did you model that? Where did they learn that?
Yep.
And so a lot of parents find themselves feeling deeply convicted when they get past the shame and they go, oh,
And so
I taught my kids to act out like that.
And the whole heart of this podcast is to break shame and teach you compassion and how to connect. But we also are wanting to stir up vision inside of anyone listening that like actually taking care of your spouse. When you have that moment where it's like, I can take care of my spouse or my kid and I can't do both, that actually you should choose your spouse sometimes.
Yep.
And
absolutely.
when you have like energy, like actually there's some things you can let fall with like your kids. You don't have to drive them to every class imaginable.
Let me just speak
You didn't
to
have
that
to have
for
the
a
house
second.
completely cleaned up. Drop it.
Yeah,
and
you
let
don't
it be
have to have
messy.
your house
100%.
completely cleaned up. You need connection with your
Yeah.
husband. Go sit on the couch and hold your husband's hand and have a dirty living room.
Yep. I will just say there's so much pressure on parents nowadays
Oh my
that
gosh.
more than there ever has been to do all the things to get your kids in play groups, to have a clean house, a Pinterest worthy house, to do the birthday parties to a T,
It's
to
too
have them
much.
dressing a certain way.
It's way
And
too much.
It's too much. You're not going to be able to do it all. And if you do it all,
You're sacrificing something.
somewhere else.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have to say, what are the things that we're not willing to sacrifice
Is my
on?
marriage or a Pinterest birthday party? What matters more?
Yep.
Oh, my marriage. I'm just going to have an average birthday
Yep.
party.
We're just going to get a cake from Costco and we're going to order a pizza and call it good.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's it. We're not even going to invite kids over.
Major birthdays will hit it.
Yep.
You just turned 13. We're
Yep.
blowing it out.
Yep. And there's
Awesome.
years that you do and there's years that you,
go-
don't.
you
But you're
don't.
not
Yep.
going to be the perfect parent. If your kids are out and about with messy faces and dirty hair, but there is a choice of
in them.
love within the context of the relationship with the family, I applaud you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let it go.
That's good.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? If the dishes have to stay in the sink another night because you're choosing not to do them
'Cause you make
after your
out with
kids
your
go to the
husband
bed and you're
instead.
going to go have sex, do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let it go. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I clean up my house to take pictures on Instagram for one day, and then the 7 days of the week, it looks like a bomb went off because I post pictures on Instagram of my house because people ask me to all the time.
Yeah.
But you know, the rest
Because
of the
it's a
days of the week, and I
beautiful
try
house.
to show them too.
Yeah.
You know, like this is actually what it looks like. half of the time I just choose to let it go. And I will say for myself, sometimes the boundary is I actually need a clean house to function well. So
Totally.
I'll put that boundary down and stick to it. But it's in the context of choosing relationship.
Yeah. So good.
Yeah. This is so good. There's so much other stuff that we couldn't even get to.
Oh yeah. We'll
But
continue the conversation
We
again
will
at some
continue
point.
the conversation. I want to just run through these really fast. The 6 things that we talked about today is to remember kids don't emotionally regulate, to teach your kids emotional health, to teach them what they're feeling, how to identify emotions, how to know what's going on inside of them. Because the more you teach them words for their emotions, that means when they're 10 years old, they won't be screaming their anger. They'll be using their words to say, I'm angry. They won't be scream crying their sadness. They'll be able to say, I'm sad.
That's good, Abby.
And so teach your kids what words are, how to spot emotions, how to know what they're feeling. Number 3, there's no such thing as perfect for your kids.
Yep.
And then number 4, there's no such thing as perfect for you as a parent.
Yep.
That's a myth. It's an idol. It's an image of something that's unattainable that is just going to make you feel horrible about yourself. And you need to not parent. Like, you need to have real people in your life. Like, if you're judging your parenting based on Instagram pictures of someone else's
Delete
parenting. Like, even Pietze, she's talked about a lot of stories that she's done good in. There's a million stories where her and her husband have made a mess. You need friends where you're sharing the real stories so that you break the bubble of imagining that there is a thing as a perfect parent.
Absolutely.
Get some support groups from people who remind you, like, yeah, I screwed up.
Yep.
Don't be friends with picture perfect people.
Nope.
I mean, you can be friends with them, but don't have them.
Guard yourself in that
Yeah,
way.
I mean,
Like,
you can stay friends with us. But.
Yes. Okay, I'll stay friends with you guys. But I mean, if Instagram really is triggering you, delete it.
Yeah.
You don't need that in your
good.
life.
Totally.
If Pinterest is triggering you, delete it. Get rid of those things.
Social media, Facebook, whatever.
Yeah,
it is.
whatever
Just like,
it is.
You don't have to be good at everything. That's not a point.
And
But
let me just say
add
one
it.
thing. If you have family, like a mother-in-law or a mother who is judging, this happens all the time with my clients. They feel really judged in parenting. Put up boundaries.
Yeah.
If you're not going to be kind, you can leave. This is how we're choosing to do our
Totally.
house.
Yeah.
You know?
Then number 5, go on the journey of parenting together.
Yeah,
Of
absolutely.
being able to fail forward together, even if there's differences in how you see the world and how you see the best option.
Yeah.
Really, it's have humility.
Yes.
That's a great way to put it.
And
That's
part
so
of this
good.
in the whole process is have compassion and empathy for your kids, have compassion and empathy for yourself, have compassion and empathy for your partner.
Yeah.
And the 6th one is to not neglect your marriage.
Yeah.
And so, like we said earlier, if you are a single parent and you can't, you obviously aren't married, so you don't have to care about the 6th one right now. Just think, woo, thank God I don't have to worry about that.
Totally. You get to do it your way.
You get to do it your way. So we just honor all of you single parents. We honor all of you parents. Parenting is the
Yes.
hardest job.
When
There's nothing that
especially there's
triggers
no
you,
manual for it.
stretches you more, pushes you past capacity, makes you do gross things, makes you not sleep. Like, there's nothing on this planet that pushes you as hard.
As
Yeah.
parenting.
As
And it's a
parenting.
beautiful thing.
And
What you're doing is beautiful.
And so we actually bless you guys to enjoy parenting again.
Yes.
That this episode would bring you life and hope to feel more connected to yourself and to others, and to feel hopeful about parenting. That this would
Yes.
break perfectionism so that there would be actually a new level of freedom and joy, so that you can enjoy your kids and not live with shame and guilt and
Yes.
fear and shoulds.
Yes.
So if you got anything out of this today, jump onto iTunes or any of the other things that you're listening from and go ahead and subscribe, rate, review, and share. That's a really big
Subscriptions
deal.
help it spread.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
and
they
and
get it
reviews,
known
people
and
look at it and they
rate
go, oh my gosh, yeah, that looks great. I want to listen to it, and tell people about us. Because our whole goal is to build more connected, healthy people who are able to walk through the messiness of life and come out thriving on the other side. So, and then join us on Facebook.com, the Connected Life Podcast. And you can find us on Instagram on Abby Stumval, Justin Stumval, and Pietze Duffield.
And you're going to want to check out Pietze Duffield's one because her kids are so freaking cute. You're going to want to see all of the videos.
Yes.
You're going to want to follow because she talks about parenting a lot. She's so incredible. She's a life consultant. Follow her. You're going to love it. It's Pietze Duffield.
Yep. Or Pietze.com.
Or Pietze.com.
You can find it through there.
.com.
All right. Well, goodbye now.
Goodbye.